What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the Gray Area with your host, ItsThatKidGreg. Now today we are talking about a topic that has been a long time coming here on the Gray Area. Some of you guys might already know what I'm talking about. This week's discussion is about the hashtag, the movement, Black Lives Matter. Let's jump into it. So what is Black Lives Matter? Well, for this, I'm going to turn to their website because I want to get as much information straight from the horse's mouth as humanly possible. The website reads as follows. Black Lives Matter is a chapter-based national organization working for the validity of Black life. We are working to rebuild the Black liberation movement. It then goes on to say, hashtag Black Lives Matter was created in 2012 after Trayvon Martin's murderer, George Zimmerman, was acquitted for his crime and dead 17-year-old Trayvon was posthumously placed on trial for his own murder. Rooted in the experiences of Black people in this country who actively resist our dehumanization, hashtag Black Lives Matter is a call to action and a response to the virulent anti-Black racism that permeates our society. Black Lives Matter is a unique contribution that goes beyond extrajudicial killings of Black people by police and vigilantes. In my own opinion, that's not really a bad thing. Most groups in this country that people identify under have some sort of advocacy group behind them, and honestly, when you think about it in terms of the way that the Trayvon Martin / George Zimmerman case was handled, it makes sense that people would be upset enough and it would cause this sort of uprising, this sort of movement. Say what you will, but the sentiment behind Black Lives Matter's creation is not wrong in my opinion. And just on a side, the whole Zimmerman case was grotesque in my opinion. I sound like Cenk Uygur saying that. Zimmerman clearly acted outside the law in my opinion, and the fact that he went unpunished for this act, and now every time you see him in the news, it's either because he's doing something violent or he's doing something ridiculous, like, I don't know, auctioning off the gun that he shot Trayvon with. It kind of says to me that this guy was, in fact, the one who was wrong in that situation, but for whatever reason, he was given the benefit of the doubt because he was at least there to tell his side of the story or whatever. But again, it seems logical that a backlash would happen after something ridiculous like this. But who are the people who started Black Lives Matter? Going back to their website, we see that the founders of Black Lives Matter's names are under a section called Her Story. Not history, her story. I could say a lot about this. I mean, all three of the founders are women, so that could be why it's called Her Story. But I also looked at the list of demand for Black Lives Matter, and we saw a lot about cis hetero patriarchal control and whatnot. But that's not really too important to this video, but it is an interesting thing to note, so I noted. BLM was created by Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patrice Cullors. In this Her Story section, it discusses how Black Lives Matter was formed as a response to 17-year-old Trayvon Martin's death, and it was initially just a hashtag on Twitter, but later evolved into a social movement after the death of 18-year-old Michael Brown at the hands of police officer Darren Wilson. Now this, I feel, is extremely important because this is where a lot of people's problems with Black Lives Matter begins. Michael Brown's death. Unlike Trayvon, Michael Brown was not a kid who was stalked by some psychopath with a gun and was shot down after the man who stalked him fought him and lost. No, Michael Brown was a criminal, as hard as that is to say. Now, that does not mean that he should have been killed and left in the street, but he was not innocent. And the way that Black Lives Matter took it upon themselves to spread the narrative of hands up, don't shoot, it created this sense of people feeling like BLM was dishonest. It's like, why are you saying hands up, don't shoot as if that's happened, even though it was proven that that was not the case. In fact, the forensic evidence from the autopsy and such showed that Michael Brown did indeed have, he had things on his body that were consistent with the story that he tried to grab Officer Wilson's gun. So the question, so like people were very upset about this. They were very annoyed at the fact that this was what was being portrayed in the media, and then it turned out to be false. And BLM was at the center of this. And then, of course, moving on to the actual case that never happened, Darren Wilson was then indicted by a grand jury, causing the city of Ferguson, where all this took place, to erupt in riots and violent protests, where BLM was again at the center of it all. Now, this is not me saying that Black Lives Matter was the cause of the violence in Ferguson. That's not what I'm saying at all. But you have to think about the perspective of someone who was not there to see what was going on. From the outside, all you see is a group of protesters standing off against police officers while the city burns behind both of them and the protesters are all screaming Black Lives Matter. While they themselves may not be the ones who are violent, they may not have been the ones who started the fire, they are the ones who are at the forefront. They are the ones who you see when the TV turns on and you hear this Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. You hear this chant going on and that gets stuck into your head. Public perception is a big deal when you are an activist group, when you are protesting, and you have to keep it in mind. Otherwise, it could totally turn the cause that you're fighting for on its head because nobody will take you seriously. I mean, just look at this well-known photo that was circulated around the time of the Ferguson riots. A man sits pondering, with a sign carrying the iconic phrase, Black Lives Matter, next to a bit of graffiti on a wall that says, "Kill cops," as the city burns behind him. This is a striking and chilling image, and much props to the original photographer. I wish I knew the man's name so I could say fucking good job and give him his proper credit, but this image is now emblazoned into people's minds. When they think back to the Ferguson riots and they think about where Black Lives Matter was at the time, they're not thinking of the people who were peacefully standing with signs in the air. They're not thinking about the people who are calling for peace. They are thinking about the man sitting in front of the city on fire with the graffiti next to him that says "Kill cops." That's what's in their heads. Again, public perception is important. They say a picture speaks 1,000 words. And looking at that picture with no idea, with no context of what's going on, what are your thoughts? Something about Black Lives Mattering, a city burns down, and they want to kill cops. That's what you see when you look at that picture. And I feel like this is why so many people want to classify Black Lives Matter as some type of hate group. Because their initial impression of Black Lives Matter, their initial perception, the thing that is engraved in their mind is that this is a group that wants to kill cops and is willing to burn the city down in order to get their point across. That is what's stuck in people's heads, and that is why they think, that's why you hear people saying, is Black Lives Matter a hate group? Is Black Lives Matter violent? All this crazy stuff. Because that's what they think based on what they saw. But then this begs the question, is Black Lives Matter a hate group? Short answer is no, Black Lives Matter is not a hate group. But is Black Lives Matter plagued with a lot of hateful people who are unfortunately the very loudest minority you could possibly find? I would have to say yes. And like almost every group that I cover on the gray area, even if I necessarily don't agree with how they go about things, I don't necessarily disagree with the sentiments behind the group. When I hear the words Black Lives Matter, I hear them saying not that Black Lives only matter, but that Black Lives Matter too. They're not saying that white lives don't matter, or police lives don't matter, or I guess blue lives don't matter, which is stupid, or that Asian lives or Hispanic lives or whatever. All they're saying is, hey, look, we're here, we're alive, we're people too. That's the sentiment behind Black Lives Matter, at least in my personal understanding. The problem is people take that and they don't act on it. In addition to not really acting on it, at least not as much as they could in my opinion, but I'll get to that later, you have the problem that exists with pretty much all of these kind of social activist movements. I mentioned it with the SJW video. I will mention it in the video on feminism if I ever get around to it. When you have groups of this nature, anybody can simply say that they are part of this group. And because anybody can say that they are part of it, you have to deal with the fact that they are now a part of it. You can't no true Scotsman your way out of that situation. You have to accept the fact that these people are part of the same demographic that you fall in, and that they are the unsavory bits of what could be a much greater movement. In addition, once you do have all these crazy radical people claiming to be part of your group and claiming to be one of you, and you can't really throw them out because of the nature of this social activist movement type deal. In addition to that, you have the fact that Black Lives Matter started as a hashtag. It was a call to action, which is stated on their website multiple times. So it's literally, it can be said by anyone. Anyone can say, hey, Black Lives Matter, and that immediately associates you with Black Lives Matter to some degree. So you can have the very reasonable, I'm thinking Bernie Sanders at that one debate where they asked, it was him and I was about to say Hillary, Jesus Christ. When it was him and Hillary, when it was him and Hillary being asked if Black Lives Matter, and he was very calm and he was like, yeah, Black Lives Matter. Like, you can have that kind of person, or you can have the crazy people holding up the sign, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, and talking about killing cops or whatever. You get those people and you get the Bernie Sanders. You have to take the good with the bad. That's how that type of movement works, where you just have to take who comes to you. And again, this plays a big role in perception and how the group is seen. I mean, just look at this clip from the Bill O'Reilly show that I picked up.
Thanks for staying with us. And Bill O'Reilly in the Unresolved Problem segment tonight, just hours after Deputy Darren Goforth was murdered in Houston, allegedly by a black man. There was an anti-police demonstration at the Minnesota State Fair by Black Lives Matter.
Pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon. Pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon. Pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon. Pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon.
Pigs in a blanket means dead police officers. Joining us now from Washington, Mary Catherine Ham. Here in New York City, Juan Williams. Is Black Lives Matter a hate group?
No, I mean, you mean like neo-Nazis or Aryan Nation or Klan or even terrorist groups like Boko Haram?
I wouldn't say they're terrorists. No. I think they're a hate group. They hate police officers.
Well, they have strong feelings about
No, they hate them. They want them dead. Pigs in a blanket is dead.
I think hate group would suggest that they have the means to commit violence, and we have not seen them involved in any violence to this point. In fact, the principal damage, I would say, is they damage themselves, because look at this, they have no agenda.
You can be charged with a hate crime by painting a swastika on a synagogue, okay?
Yes.
These people, after the death, the murder of this deputy, went out and said, we want more police officers killed.
But what I'm saying to you is these people, you should know that this Black Lives Matter, if they're doing damage, if they're hurting somebody, they're hurting the legacy of the civil rights movement in this country.
I don't argue with that.
They have no agenda.
But my question is, are they a hate group? Mary Catherine.
No, I do not think they're a hate group. Here's the thing, though. If they used the standard that the left uses for groups on the right when categorizing hate groups, then yes, they would be. Because here's the thing. Many on the left and many in the media are interested in classifying anybody who disagrees with them politically as haters. I think that's an unfair standard. And this is a movement that I disagree with sometimes, and this was a disgusting representation of that movement. I don't think that everyone in that movement is engaged in this kind of thing.
And
I think that they have some
dissent.
points
I think they're a hate group, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to put them out of business.
Now, all three of these people have a sort of negative view of BLM. O'Reilly straight up thinks that it's a hate group and no, they want to kill cops. Of course, that's what they want. That's what they're asking for. Pigs in a blanket, frying like bacon, whatever. And then you have the other guy who's like, no, they're not a hate movement, but they're a spit in the face to the civil rights movement because they're a mob. They have no organization. They're a formless mass in the streets. And then you have the other woman. Well, they're not a hate movement unless you want to go by the left standards. In which case, so to her, it's just a left-wing agenda. That's three different complete mindsets looking at one group. And the reason why you have this type of situation is, well, partly because people are individuals and people can have their own opinions, but you also have this because the group is unorganized, at least from my perspective. There's not enough structure within Black Lives Matter to build up a reputation in which people can look at it and all have a similar idea about what the group is about. And again, looking unorganized, looking like you're a mob, it rubs people the wrong way. It gives them a bad perception of what you are and what you want. I mean, just take it back to, I showed this clip in my video about SJWs where you have these two Black Lives Matter girls, and I didn't show it in that video, but later on a boy also jumps up on the stage as well. And they basically no platform Bernie Sanders. The guy who, honestly, of all the presidential candidates at that time, probably would have been the most on their side, and they completely no-platformed him in order to get on stage and call everybody they're racist.
So right now, we're going to honor this space, and we're going to honor the memory of Michael Brown, and we're going to honor all of the Black Lives Lost this year, and we're going to honor the fact that I have to fight through all these people to say, my life matters! That I have to get up here in front of a bunch of screaming white racists to say my life fucking matters! My life matters!
Because, you know, whatever, they came to hear the most progressive candidate and, you know, the one that wanted to end federal prisons and end money on politics and end the prohibition of marijuana and all this stuff that hurts black people a lot. No, fuck that guy. Fuck that guy. Everybody who likes him is a racist. You guys are all racist. Whatever. I'm going off, and this is not okay. It's not. I'm going off right now. My point being is that it is very, very easy for a few bad apples to spoil the bunch. And there's a reason why that saying exists. It's because it is true. No matter how good your group is, if there is something rotten within it, people will have a natural aversion to it. You constantly hear this talking point from the Republicans about the bowl of Skittles and like 3 of them are poisoned. And the reason why they say this is because they know that people naturally have an aversion to things like that. It's the same concept of the bad apple spoiling the bunch, you know? That whole idea of like unpredictability is why people have an aversion to that kind of situation. People don't like to play the odds, people like to play to win. Speaking of unpredictability, let's talk about Black Lives Matter's goals. Yeah, so that clip that I played earlier is kind of outdated. He said that, oh no, Black Lives Matter has no agenda. Well, that's not the case anymore. I covered their list of demands, which you can watch here. Every time I put a video here, I like Vogue on it, and there's no reason for that. It's not like you're gonna see my other arm. to notice how beautiful the movements are. But yeah, so I covered their list of demands, and it exists, it is there, but if you watch that video, and it's very long, so if you do watch it, you're a saint, but in that video, my biggest complaint I found is not just my biggest complaint, it's multiple people's biggest complaint, and that is that Black Lives Matter doesn't really focus on black people, which you would think a group called Black Lives Matter would do. And as I was doing research in this video, I was initially going to find like clips of people who are against Black Lives Matter, black people who are against Black Lives Matter, because they felt like Black Lives Matter did not actually represent them, did not actually care about black lives. And I found way too much stuff. It was way too much. I could not possibly fit all of it in this one video. In fact, there's a YouTuber by the name of Amon Jones who has a whole series called like Blacks Against Black Lives Matter or something like that. And it's insane to watch. I will link to him in the description, as well as to a video that I particularly enjoy, which will correlate to some of the things I'm talking about here. And check that out, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about when I say that a lot of black people don't really think Black Lives Matter cares. They don't think Black Lives Matter cares about them. And I think the biggest way that this whole thing comes together is on the subject of black on black crime, which is basically just what I do on the gray area every time with these black t-shirts. This is just black on black crime right here. On BLM's website, they claim that black on black crime is just a problem that exists because, one, crimes within a racial group will always be higher than interracial crime, and two, the system that we live in is designed to keep blacks poor and out of power, impoverished and disenfranchised. And so because of that, there is more crime in black communities. And this is, I mean, true to an extent. One, crimes within a race are always more than crimes against another race. You're always gonna have more white people killing white people than killing black people. You're always gonna have more black people killing black people than black people killing white people, and that's just simply because you commit crimes around people that you know. That's how that works. And so if you're a black person, most likely you are going to live around more black people, and if you have to decide to shoot another person, you're gonna most likely shoot somebody who's nearby. The same applies to poverty. When you have people who are poor, they are more likely to commit crime because they see no other options for them. When you're poor, you can't get much of an education outside of like high school, and it's hard finding jobs in this type of economy, and so you're more likely to commit crime. That is a truth. But then they mention that people who bring up black on black crime are simply using it as a diversionary tactic, or that it's just to derail the conversation, and that to me is a very, very harmful view. The reason why black on black crime is singled out is because the crime rate in the black community, the homicide rate specifically, is disproportionately high compared to our population. White people in the United States, not counting Hispanic people, I don't know where they invented white Hispanics, but not counting Hispanic people, they outnumber black people about 5 to 1. Just around there. And we kill each other, we kill ourselves at approximately the same rate, which should not be the case at all. To put this in perspective, according to the FBI, in 2013, about 2,300 black people who were the victims of homicide were killed by other black people. Compare that to white people who The number was 25 for homicide victims who were white, who were killed by white people. This is a statistical nightmare. It should not be like that. It should not be that high. Looking at all the other groups in this category, it is nowhere near that high, especially considering the fact that we are a fifth of the white population. So why is our murder rate at about 90% of theirs, maybe more, excuse my math, even though we're a fifth of their population? It's a serious problem. And for Black Lives Matter to say that it's a diversionary tactic, that it's just something brought up to throw the conversation off, it's either intellectually dishonest or it's just ignorant. It's one or the other. It cannot be something else, because if you understand the math, you realize it's a huge problem. And if you don't understand the math, then you're just gonna not say that it's a problem. That's the only two ways I can look at it. So I guess in this case, something's black and white. And again, perception is the key. Look, more black people are killed by other black people than they are killed by police officers, and even more so if you want to factor out all the non-white police officers in that situation. So when people look and they see Black Lives Matter mainly campaigning, oh, we need to reform the police, we need to reform the police, and they say, yeah, but it seems like you have a bigger problem over there, don't you want to go and fix that? Like, again, like, perception is huge. And look, I'm not defending the police. I think the amount of power that is given to police in this country is insane. I think they've gotten way out of hand. We have had too many times where the police have shot and killed someone who probably could have been dealt with in a more peaceful manner. I mean, I personally feel like we need better vetting for police officers. We need to see if they are actually mentally stable. If I remember correctly, it was in the Tamir Rice case where the officer had previously been let go from one precinct because he was seen as too quick to pull his gun. And if you watch the video of Tamir Rice being killed, the guy's literally just rolled up, jumped out the car, and took 2 shots, didn't even think about it. Kid was down in like 12 seconds, if I'm not mistaken. But with all that being said, even though I do want to see police be reformed, even though I do want to see body cameras, even though I do want to see more accountability in the police force, you can't call your group Black Lives Matter and then disregard one of the biggest threats to black life in the country. It seems like it's most people will look at that and say you're full of shit, and that is what's happening with Black Lives Matter a lot of the time. The people who talk against Black Lives Matter usually are not racist. I mean, I don't think most of them are. I'm sure there are a few, but usually they're not racist. They're just people who look at that and say, no, sorry, you're full of shit. But you might be asking now, well, Greg, what do you want them to do about it? How are they supposed to solve the problem? How are they supposed to end black on black crime? Look, I'm not saying that BLM should be the ones to end black on black crime. I'm not saying that they need to come in and all be Superman and save the black man from his trifling problems or whatever the fuck. I just want to see Black Lives Matter get better. The same way how I want to see social justice get better. All these advocacy groups that exist in this country, they have some really dope ideas behind them. I really believe that. But there needs to be something more. There needs to be something to make them be better than what they are. They need to be able to look outside of the box of people that already agree with them and just understand, like, okay, we're doing this right now, but we can be also doing this. I want to see Black Lives Matter get more organized. I want to see Black Lives Matter come into the black communities and try to get better funding for the schools. I want to see Black Lives Matter coming in and trying to offer some type of alternative to keep young people away from gangs in black communities. I want to see Black Lives Matter come down and encourage black kids to stay in school. I want to see Black Lives Matter down here when there is a shooting and asking for an end to violence, as opposed to some white guy that I've never seen before and have never seen since. I want to see Black Lives Matter actually speaking to the higher ups in the police, talking to police unions, and trying to get better relationships with the communities that they're in. And most importantly, I want to see Black Lives Matter really display that Black Lives Matter to them. I want to see them put their money where their mouth is, literally. Black Lives Matter is it's a chapter organization. It's huge. They have the opportunity and the manpower to form what could very well be like a black lobby, where instead of walking around the streets screaming out, we want this and we want that, they can actually be going to politicians and lobbying for certain laws, lobbying for certain reformations and such. Now, will all of it be great? I don't know. I don't agree with Black Lives Matter on a lot of things, on how they wish to go about things, about what things that they focus on. But I think they would be much better for it if they were more organized, if they were more structured, if they were more capable of actually getting their goals accomplished. Because the unfortunate truth is we have a lot of people in America who can't separate Black Lives Matter from black people. And so what ends up happening is, and the reason why I kept bringing up perception throughout this video, is you guys end up being the face for all of us. And if you guys mess up too much, oh, we have to carry that burden on our shoulders. Everybody else who's not part of the activism. So you can't just be like, oh, well, you know, those are just whatever, that's them. But we're out here being peaceful. No, you gotta do better than that. You have to be the ones. It's your group. You guys started it. You have to be the ones willing to say, nah, we can't have this. We don't agree with that. We disavow this. We do that. Because in the end, it's a reflection on us. The reason why the civil rights movement was so successful, and at the time, you know, people looked at it and they thought, oh, these people are crazy. But the reason why the civil rights movement succeeded is because they constantly held their image, you know, poised, stoic, organized, prepared. Malcolm X, Huey Newton, Martin Luther King Jr. You had all these figures who stood tall and kept calm. And so the perception was, these are the people representing black people. Like, that's how it was. Like, they represented black people. And so they constantly kept themselves in check in order to make sure that they didn't fuck it up for the rest of us, basically. And when you don't have that kind of check, but you do have the type of manpower that a civil rights movement is required to have in order to function, you get Ferguson, you get Milwaukee, you get Charlotte, you get all this craziness, all this violence, all this randomness, and the only thing that the real race, the people who are actually racist, the people that you would want to sway the absolute most, the only thing they are going to see in those cases where you have no organization, you have no structure, and you have no role models amongst the group to keep everyone in check, all they're gonna see is a bunch of angry, violent niggas screaming Black Lives Matter. But that's just what I think. What do you guys think? Please comment in the comment box below. This drained the energy out of me. This entire video has drained me. Drop a like if you agree or dislike. Personally, I don't care. Like, share your opinion. Really, it like, I don't like. If you don't agree with me, tell me why you don't agree with me. Please, I'm interested to read. I read every comment that I get, so please do that. And hey, if you want to share this with somebody, go ahead and do that. But with that being said, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and remember, nothing is black and white. I mean, this video is about black people, but you know, whatever, you get it. Finally, you know what, I wore crew necks, I wore V-necks. This time I said, I'm going all the way different. I'm putting a pocket on this one. So for this week, limited edition pocket to make up for something else that's missing. Oh man, I'm wild right now. This is good.